Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today, we're diving into the latest annual report from Equillium, a biotech company. This report is like a sneak peek into their financial health and future plans. Will they make it big, or will they need a miracle? Let's find out. First things first, this report called a 10K pulls in information from another document, Equillium's proxy statement for their upcoming annual meeting. This proxy statement will tell us about important stuff like who's on the board and how much they get paid. Think of it as the behind the scenes look that influences everything. Equillium is focused on developing treatments for severe autoimmune and inflammatory diseases, which they call immunoinflammatory disorders. It's a mouthful, but think of diseases where your immune system attacks your own body, causing swelling and damage. They want to either sell these drugs themselves or partner with bigger companies. Their main drug is itolizumab, now called EQ001. It's designed to calm down overactive immune cells while keeping the good ones that protect you. It's currently in testing for acute graft-versus-host disease, or GVHD. They also have a couple of other drugs in the pipeline, EQ302 for gut issues and EQ101 for skin problems. Equillium doesn't do it all alone. They have a deal with Biotech, a company that manufactures itolizumab. Biotech handles making the drug. For that, Biotech gets paid royalties on sales in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. They also might get milestone payments hitting certain goals. Just recently, a company called Ono had an option to buy Equillium's rights to itolizumab. They paid Equillium $26.4 million up front and covered all the development costs for a couple of years, adding up to another $67.1 million. But Ono decided to pass. This deal ending is a pretty big deal for Equillium. One of the big areas they are targeting is graft-versus-host disease, or GVHD. It happens after stem cell transplants when the new immune system attacks the patient's own body. It can be deadly, so there's a big need for better treatments. Now let's look at the numbers from one of Equillium's key clinical studies, called Equita. This study involved patients with a GVHD and tested how well itolizumab worked. Now, it didn't meet the main goal at day 29, which was improvement in complete response rate, but this is important. By day 99, there was a clinically meaningful improvement in durable CR, and they saw some significant evidence of clinical benefit on pre-specified secondary endpoints of duration of CR and failure-free survival. Patients who had itolizumab lived longer, with fewer instances of the condition returning, the duration of CR and failure-free survival. Patients who had itolizumab lived longer, with fewer instances of the condition returning. The duration of CR was about 30-36 in Bayes with itoli-3 survival. Patients who had itolizumab lived longer with fewer instances of the condition returning. The duration of CR was about 336 days with itolizumab against 72 days with placebo. Looking at safety, itolizumab seemed okay. It had an adverse event profile similar to what they had seen before. The infection risk, a typical concern with a GHD, wasn't worse than the placebo. Next step, it's talking to the FDA about the study results and whether it's enough for them to apply for approval. The hope is that they'll be able to submit all the paperwork in the first half of 2026. They're looking at another drug called EQ302, which is designed for gut problems like celiac disease. It's all paused for now because it means more funding. Also another drug called EQ101. It did well in an early study for people with alopecia areata, a condition that causes hair loss. This also paused until they can find someone to pay for further development. Intellectual property is key for biotech companies. So let's scroll through some of Equillium's patents. They have a bunch of patents around their multi-cytokine tech, which could be big for future drugs. In a few lines, it mentions that currently there are no approved products to treat celiac disease. Currently, there are no approved products to treat celiac disease, which puts them in a good spot if they decide to continue with EQ302's development. So who are they up against? A lot of big names, actually. In the GVHD market, you've got names like Incyte and Mesoblast. In celiac disease, companies like Amgen, Novartis, and Pfizer are all trying to get a piece of the pie. Manufacturing is outsourced. They depend on Biotech. They're contract manufacturers of their own here. If things line up, positive study results, manufacturing all set, they'll send in a BLA or biologics license application to the FDA. This kicks off a review process that could take almost a year. If it gets approved, they can start selling. To speed things up, they might try for what's called fast track designation or even breakthrough therapy status. They also have orphan drug status, which gives them some perks. This status is for drugs that treat rare diseases. It gives them things like tax credits, and if they get approved, 7 years without competitors. The filing is mentioning that even after getting FDA approval, they're not off the hook. The FDA keeps a close eye on manufacturing, advertising, and how the drug is being used. They have to keep reporting any issues that come up. The filing mentions that there are many laws around marketing and sales too, like the anti-kickback statute, which aims to make sure doctors aren't getting paid to prescribe certain drugs. These laws are in place to try and keep healthcare costs down and prevent fraud. Okay, let's move on to some quick housekeeping. Equillium says they've submitted all their required interactive data files electronically, so they're keeping up with the digital paperwork. The company also has its auditing team mentioned. It is KPMG LLP. The report states that the company's public float is about $15.4 million. Public float is how much of their stock is available for the general public to buy and sell. This 10K report will contain information from the definitive proxy statement for its 2025 annual meeting of stockholders. This annual report on Form 10K contains forward-looking statements. Every 10K has the risk factors. This is very important because the company has to disclose all things that could lead to the company's failure. So here are some of the ones I found. First and foremost, they have a history of losses and they expect that to continue. They might never be profitable. Because of this, they say there's substantial doubt about their ability to keep going as a business. They need more cash to develop and potentially sell their drugs. If they can't get the money, they might have to cut back on programs. They have recently reduced headcount to save cash. The company has implemented these initiatives, but it is never clear how they will turn out. This is critical. If they have to sell off assets or dissolve the company, the value for stockholders depends on how well they can get out of existing contracts and obligations on good terms, which there is no guarantee of. Basically, they are hinging everything on itolizumab. If it doesn't work out, they are in a bad spot. This includes the chance that some adverse side effects happen when selling the treatment in other locations of the world. Any delays in clinical trials could increase costs, delay their ability to raise capital, and generally mess up their commercial prospects. This is really important too. Their stock might get kicked off the Nasdaq, which would make it harder for you to sell your shares. Also, the report states they are a non-accelerated filler, but a smaller reporting company, which gives them additional leeway in disclosure requirements. Also, any adverse developments in the use of itolizumab and other countries may affect our ability to advance and make a profit. Lastly, this was not a shell company, in case you were wondering. To summarize, the financial situation that the filing says is causing substantial doubt about the company Q. If $2 in 2024 and $6 million of 2024 theory. They anticipate this lasting into the third quarter of 2025. They anticipate this lasting into the third quarter of 2025 too. They are looking for additional capital through various methods. Now here's a quick look at their expenses. For 2024, operating expenses were around $49.4 billion, a slight decrease from $50.66 million the year before. Here's the money quote related to the financial reports. The financial statements do not include any adjustments relating to the recoverability and classification of recorded asset amounts, or the amounts and classification of liabilities that might result from the outcome of the uncertainties described above. Worth mentioning here that the report was audited by KPMG. I won't read it in full, but it's here for you to check out. So what's the overall take on Equillium? Their future hinges on the success of itolizumab, but the data looks shaky, the market is crowded, and funding is a big question mark. If you want a short-term investment, be careful. Their stock could get delisted. If you want a short-term investment, be careful. Their stock could get delisted. Undoubtedly, Equillium is going to need to do a lot to turn things around. The challenges are really high, and the business has a long way to go to show strength.